Oh, hey, kids. Wow, that was fun. That was interesting. Well, welcome back to TC3 Kids Week Service. You're like, what did I just witness? We're talking through a whole series here called Power Up, where we want to level up our game in God. And sometimes there's some great games that we like to play, and they have to do with different kinds of fighting games. You know, they're like wrestling games, and so my buddy here and I, we go way back, okay? So we're still good friends. We're just sort of messing around here, but we like to wrestle. But there are a lot of kind of fighting games, aren't there? Or wrestling games. How about maybe even like boxing games, where you can punch each other out, little boxing games, or maybe you got some sort of karate game. You like ninja chop somebody. What's your favorite kind of game to play if it comes to like the fighting? Not with guns and tanks and things and airplanes, but if you're like hand to hand, what's your favorite game to sort of wrestle around with and just like knock each other up with? And so I wonder, what is it going to be? Take 60 seconds right now and talk about it. Think about different kinds of video games, things that you like to play that might have to do with some sort of like fighting skill kind of game. All right, there's a lot of good ones out there, even ones that go on your app. So do that for 60 seconds, and I'll see you back here in just a minute. What'd you come up with? What is your favorite kind of fighting style game? I wonder what it is. You know, video games, that's okay. We can fight in video games, but let's not do that in real life, of course. Now, today, guys, we're going to continue to go through our series here. It's a series that we're actually in week number 6. Can you believe it? Week number 6. It's called Power Up. And Power Up, we want to level up our game and our walk with God. And we're doing that by looking at 8 different Bible heroes that truly lived and leveled up their game in who God called them to be. Yeah, it's amazing. Everyone we've talked about so far. And today's no exception, as we can talk today about the guy named Jacob in the book of Genesis. In Genesis, we're going to be in chapters 32 today. Genesis 32. If you want to go there, we're going to be actually in Genesis 32, verses 22 through 32. Okay, so a little bit easy to find, right? Right there in the beginning of the Bible. You can't make a mistake. It's right there. Genesis 32. But before we get there, we got to think about who Jacob is. You see, Jacob is a pretty interesting story here. You see, Jacob is actually a twin. He is. He was born. Now he had a brother, but unfortunately, Jacob was born second. His first brother was born, and as his mom was giving birth to the first brother, Jacob was actually holding on to the foot of his brother, okay? So Jacob is reaching out. He's holding the foot of his older brother. It's going to be older by like a minute or so, right? So he's holding onto the foot, and the parents see, whoa, this kid, it's sort of like pulling like 2 babies out at once. Like, whoa, this is so weird, okay? And so because of that, he's a little bit tricky and deceptive. So here's what's going on. So the parents try to think of some awesome, epic names for their kids, right? And so they named the first son Esau. Esau means hairy. Okay, the kid was born with a lot of hair on his head and on his body. He was born with a lot of hair. So I don't know what they were thinking. And then they called the second son, of course, Jacob, which means deceiver or tricky. Okay, so I don't know what these parents were thinking, but hairy and tricky. Okay, it's sort of a weird start to our Bible story here, right? But as they get older, they take sort of different paths, but they're still brothers. But here's the thing. You see, back then, at the biblical times, when the older brother would be with the father and the younger brother would be with the father as well, the older brother would always get the bigger blessing, which basically means that when the dad is ready to leave, when the dad is ready if he's ready to die and pass on, he leaves all of his best blessings to the oldest son. Even though Esau was only like a minute older, like 60 seconds older than Jacob, he's able to say he's going to leave the bigger blessing for Esau, and Jacob knows that. You see, one day, Jacob actually pulls out a cheat code. He's actually pulling out a cheat code here. And what he does is he sees that Esau's out there. He's working really hard out in the field, and he's got a big old sweat going, and he's probably hurting. The sun's beating down on him, and he sees his brother is really, really hungry. Jacob walks out there with a big bowl of stew, right? So he pulls out cheat code stew. That's what we're going to call it, cheat code stew. He pulls out this big old bowl of stew. He's like, nom, 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 look at the stew. This is pretty good, Esau. I bet you're hungry. And Esau's like, yeah, man. Jacob, hey, little brother, he called him little brother, I'm sure, just to make fun of him a little bit. But he's like, Jacob, man, I could really use some of that stew right now. I'm so famished. I'm so hungry. And so Jacob's like, hey, tell you what. I will give you my stew if you give me your birthright. Okay? You give me your birthright, and I'll give you my stew. And Esau's like, I don't care. Okay? I'm so hungry, I could die right now, so I'll give you my birthright. Okay? So, of course, Esau probably thought it was a joke. Like, you don't just give away a birthright over a bowl of stew. All right? So, Jacob gives him the birthright. Jacob gives Esau the stew, and Esau gives Jacob the birthright, I guess you could say. Yeah, it's really weird, right? But so it goes on. As they get older, their father gets older. All right, and Jacob in the back of his mind says, "I got my brother's birthright. Woohoo!" It's not like that. It doesn't work like that. And Jacob knew that too. Now, Daddy's about really old, and when he got really old, his eyesight starts to go really, really dark, and he can't see very well. And he knows that pretty soon his time on earth is going to come up soon. And he's going to die soon, and he knows that. So what he needs to do before he passes away, he needs to pass on the birthright to Esau. He needs to give his blessing on to Esau so Esau would get all the best that their father had to offer from the family. Here's the thing. The mom was sort of on the side of Jacob. She took a lot of sympathy towards Jacob. And so the mom and Jacob made this plan that they were going to bring in to the dad on his bed while he couldn't see very well. They're going to bring in this food, and he was going to say, Father, you need to give me your blessing. And remember Esau, what does Esau mean? Hairy, right? And so Jacob got this little plan, and the mom helped him as well. They put hair on the arm of Jacob. While Esau went way out to do some sort of grocery run or something, go out there and do something amazing to help the family, the mom and Jacob decorated his arm, Jacob's arm, with a little bit of hair so he would feel like the arm of Esau. And he brought him this food, and he brought it into his father. He said, Father, probably changed his voice a little bit too. Father, I see that you're going to die soon. And Father calls him in. Come in, son, I can't see you. And he comes in. How do I know it really is you, Esau? And he puts out his arm. Dad feels the arm of Jacob, the fake arm, right? And he's convinced that that's Esau. And he says, son, I give you my blessing. At that moment, Esau comes barging in. Dad, what did you do? Oh my goodness, you gave your blessing to the wrong son. I'm Esau. That's Jacob. Oh no! Daddy, give me your blessing. You didn't know. No, it's too late, son. It's too late. I'm sorry I didn't know. Oh, I'm so sorry I didn't know. Jacob has your birthright now. Oh, I'll give you a little bit of crummy leftovers, okay? And like, no, Dad, no. Esau gets so mad that he chases after Jacob, sort of like brotherly fight, right? And so Esau chases him down. Mom's like, Jacob, you better hightail it out of here. And so he does. Jacob has to run away to protect himself. And Mommy does help protect him. But he has to leave the family. He leaves Esau behind. He leaves his family behind. He leaves everything. Even though he got the blessing, he got that ultimate birthright blessing. It was all for what? That deceiver, that tricky little Jacob really made a big mistake here, didn't he? Well, Jacob found his way into a city. He found his way into a protective farm where he found a man who had 2 daughters, and one of them was named Rachel. He went to the woman and he said, "Sir, this woman here, your daughter Rachel, is beautiful. Oh my goodness, I've never seen such a radiant sunshine like Rachel. She is amazing. Woo! I want to marry that woman." And so the dad's like, "Okay, you can do that. However, you're going to have to work for me for 7 years." "Okay, yeah, I could do that." He must have really, really liked this girl. So he works really hard for 7 years, and he goes up to the dad and says, "Father, my father person, hey, check this out. I have worked for you now for 7 years. You owe me your daughter Rachel in marriage." And so he goes down the wedding. He goes to the wedding. He goes down. He goes down there. He says, "Do you take this woman?" He's like, "I do." "Do you take this man?" "I do." And so they go and they marry. Now they're married. And they lift the veil off of the woman. And it turns out it's not Rachel. It's Rachel's older sister. And I know it's sort of weird, sort of funny story. I'm not trying to make fun of him here, but it says that the older sister actually had like a lazy eye. A lazy eye means basically one of her eyes probably were pointing in. I can't do that, but both of her eyes were pointing in. She looked maybe a little bit like this. She had what's called a lazy eye. All right? You see, Jacob didn't work for 7 years to marry the wrong girl. He goes to dad and said, "Hey, you tricked me." Sounds familiar, right? What goes around comes around. "You tricked me. You gave me the wrong girl." "Well, Jacob, you got to understand something. You see, Rachel's sister is the older sister, and by law, she's supposed to be married first, okay? Traditionally, and we feel better if she's married first. If you want Rachel, you have to work for me for another 7 years." So Jacob does. He works for another 7 years, and then he finally, after 14 years, finally gets the woman that he wants to be his wife. Pretty awesome, right? Well, all of this goes down, and then he gets the news that his brother Esau is coming to go get him. Esau's on his way to get him. He finds out that, and at this time, Jacob, after a long time, had amassed a pretty large amount of wealth and people, a good-sized community. And he knew that his brother was coming down with this big amount of army and people. Jacob didn't want to fight his brother. He didn't want to. And so he makes a plan. He splits up his community into 2 parts. So if Esau were to attack one community, the other part of it would get away or escape. If he attacked this community, this part would get away. And so he's making all his plan. And then he sends gifts ahead of him. He says, "Hey, I hear my brother's coming in the distance." So he sends this like caravan of donkeys and gifts and gold and clothing and things, right? To try to win favor in his brother. And then it happens. Jacob falls asleep. He falls asleep and he starts to, well, it's almost like a dream. You see, this is where you can pick up in Genesis chapter 32. You see what happens in verse 22. That night, Jacob got up and he took his 2 wives. Remember, he had 2 wives. He took his 2 wives, his maidservants, and all his sons and crossed them in the ford. He sent in one direction, sent a bunch in the other. And he says, "But Jacob, I will not." And then something crazy happens. When a man after he sent them across the stream, he sent all his possessions, and Jacob was left alone. And a man was there. A man wrestled with him until daybreak. So we're going to go back to my buddy here, because he and I are good friends, right? So Jacob sees a man, and don't know exactly why, but he goes in. I guess he feels like he's threatened by this. He goes in. He starts to wrestle this dude. He's like, "Ugh," and he starts to beat him. And here's the thing. He's holding him down. Like, "Yeah, I'm going to win. I'm going to win. Yeah." He's like, "Oh, hold him down." Right? He's holding him down. He's got him. He's holding him down. And then what he doesn't realize, though, is Jacob doesn't realize that what he's doing is he's actually wrestling with God. He's wrestling with God. God sees that Jacob's not going to give up. He sees that Jacob's going to keep wrestling with him. And so God does something. He takes his hand and he touches the hip side of Jacob. And when he does it, it's sort of like a power down, okay? Not a power up, a power down. He touches the hip side of Jacob, and it pulls the tendon inside his hip. And then he starts to walk with a limp. And this time he keeps wrestling, but even with the pain, he keeps wrestling with this man. He doesn't realize it's God. He keeps wrestling and wrestling. Don't go anywhere. We'll come back to you. So Jacob answered, the man asked him, what is your name? Jacob, he answered. The man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men, and you have overcome. And then Jacob said, hey, please tell me your name. And he replied, but why do you ask my name? And he blessed him right there. And Jacob was able to walk away from this. Well, limp away from this. You see, does that sound familiar? Israel, his name was changed to Israel. Israelites, Israel, the start of it, yeah. Well, not really the start of it, but that's where the Israelite army or the nation comes from. Pretty amazing, right? Pretty amazing. Now, Jacob does find his brother Esau, and in a crazy turn of events, Jacob falls to the feet of Esau, and he falls to his brother's feet and says, I am so sorry. And instead of Esau taking out his brother, he picks him up and he cries over him, hugs him, and they are able to reconcile the differences. You know, that's pretty awesome. If you think about it, you stop and think about all of that happening, Jacob really learned something amazing. He agreed, you know, this is the most amazing thing to happen to me. God was teaching him a whole lot. God taught him so much more than he could ever think. Now, I got a little something here. Even though Jacob used some cheater codes to try to win over, God was trying to teach him something. It's sort of like this little glob here. Maybe you've seen it before. It's called oobleck. Have you ever seen oobleck? I got to free my hands up here, so I'm gonna put my microphone over here. Oobleck's fun. I love oobleck. All right, so oobleck is this hard substance, right? You punch it, it's like, ow. It's really hard substance when you just push on it, and when you smack it down, and when you try to pick it up, it's like, pick it up here, and you sort of squeeze it, and it takes this hard, crumbly shape. But here's the thing. When you let it go, it turns into like a little bit of a liquid, and it starts to fall through your hands. It becomes soft and moldable. It's something you can use. You see, if I squeeze it, hold on to it really, really tight, it doesn't do anything, but just get really, really tight. But when I let it go, it liquefies, becomes soft, and almost like a little more fun to play with. Yeah. Pretty cool. You stop and think about that. Now, our lives could be like that as well, like this oobleck. You see, we can be hardened and hold ourselves up against God, or we can just sort of let God, we can let go and let God be God in your life. We have a great, let's all wrap this up. So let's talk about this. What did we learn today in game number 6 today? Let's talk about that. What did we learn today? And let's review what happened in game number 6 today. Today, our game is called the ultimate match, right? The ultimate match. Who's our champion? Jacob. And what did he learn today? He learned this word here called humility. He was humble. He learned what it meant to be humble. Instead of always tricking people, he was able to be humble to other people and humble to God. And he let God do what God does instead of trying to take control of everything. So what's our bottom line? Let's talk about what did we learn. The bottom line is this today. The bottom line is this. God's way is always the best way. God's way is always the best way. So awesome. Hey, before we get going, let's look at our power verse real quick. Our power verse is going to help us humble our hearts a little bit more in 2 Peter 1:3. All right, 2 Peter 1:3. Okay, 2 Peter 1:3. Let's read this out loud. If you're sitting, stand up so we can read this out loud. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. By his divine power, God has given us everything we need for living a godly life. We receive all of this by coming to know him, the one who called us to himself by means of his marvelous glory and excellence. 2 Peter 1:3. Now, that was pretty good. But my buddy here and I, we need to help you guys out. We need to help humble you a little bit more, but we're going to take a bunch of words away. Okay, last week, you saw all these words disappear. Ready? There it is. All right, right now, we'll keep it there. We're going to look at it. We're going to take away a word. Let's take away a word. Whoa, a bunch of words. Holy cow. All those words are gone. Okay, now, what is it going to look like today? Do you have any more words to take away today? Here we go. I'm going to read this out loud, and you guys say the missing words. Ready? 1, 2, 3. By divine power, God given us everything we need for living a godly life. Have, what's that word? Oh, receive, yeah. All by coming to know him, the who, us to himself by means of his marvelous excellence. 2 Peter 1:3. Marvelous glory and excellence. That's awesome. That's great. But you know what? I don't think we're done yet. I think we need to take another word away. Okay, ready? Take a word away. 1, 2, 3. Oh, my goodness. There it is. It's gone. What was that word? I forgot. I know I didn't forget. I know you didn't forget. So let's go one more time. 1, 2, 3. By divine power, God given us everything we need for living a godly life. Have all by coming to know him, the who, us to himself by, what was that word? Means, very good, means of his marvelous blank glory and excellence. 2 Peter 1:3. Dude, that is amazing. I am so proud of you. We are so proud of you. But you know what? We need to get back to our wrestling match here. So I'm going to get back to my wrestling match because we just like to sort of mess around here. And I will see you. We'll see you next week. Yeah, definitely. Come on back because we have 2 more Bible heroes we need to go through. All right. Until then, y'all take care. Bye-bye.